Welcome to the podcast. It's the magical holidays. Time for Joe watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. Why, you might ask? Because it sounds like a crazy task to be watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. It'll be struggle, no I won't lie. By the halfway point I will lose my mind, but with your support I'm gonna be fine. So let's have a blast on this Christmas time. Join me now and let's find out about today's Christmas movie. Was it good or bad? Happy or sad? Is there another dead mom and dad? Let's get to it with no delay. It's your old pal Joe and he's happy to say welcome to Joe watches 60 Christmas movies in 60 days.
How is it going, everybody? It's me, it's your old pal Joe, and welcome to episode 19 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. How are you holding up? Me, struggling a bit. But the good news is, today's movie was pretty all right. I liked this one. It was a movie. It was a real movie with real characters in it that did real things. And that was a delight to behold, even if it lasted 15 more minutes than the other movies I've watched. That seemed... It's not unnecessary. I mean, it had the space that mostly it needed. But come on, man. Can't we just get this... Why can't all movies be a tight and weird 80 minutes instead of this hulking monstrosity at an hour 45? It's fine. But when you're looking at the movies, you want them over as soon as possible. We'll get to today's movie in just a moment. Before we do, though, of course, let me send a shout out to my sponsor, Third Eye Comics. Third Eye Comics is sponsoring this entire season of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. And without them, I promise you, I'm genuine about this. This season would not have existed without their assistance. They are helping cover the hosting fees, and for that I will be forever grateful. And that's not even an exaggeration. If you want anything in the world of comics, gaming, music, or movies, please check them out at shop.thirdeyecomics.com. And if you do buy something from them, tell them Joe sent you so they know that the people supporting me are supporting them. And as a thank you for them, obviously, supporting me. Let's talk about today's movie, The Christmas Checklist. As I mentioned, I enjoyed this movie. It looks like a real movie. It acts like a real movie. It has performances that are like a real movie. The one downside is I don't think that my discussion of this movie will do it justice. And I mean this with all my heart. Don't listen to this episode. Just watch this movie if it sounds interesting to you. I don't know whether my notes are going to be any good. I feel like my notes are getting collectively worse and worse as I get more tired of watching all these movies. But that's not what my job here is, to talk about the movie. Your freedom is to maybe not listen to me talk about the movie. Let's get into it, though. We open with a cute little girl talking to her mom in a Christmas-decorated living room. She tells her mom how she feels sad that their family isn't as big as others because it's just her and her mom. Her mom understands but tells her kid that they'll always have each other. This little girl is our main character, Emily, as a child. We'll soon fast forward to her adult years. Her mom tells her that there are some worries we can control and some we can't. And for those you can't control, you can put them in a box. And then she gets a box and she writes on the side of the box worries. And then she shows her how to kind of like put the worry into the box. Then the two of them sing Jingle Bells. Cut to the present. We're in the same living room, but it's a lot darker now, a lot more dour. Emily walks through wearing dark pajamas, looking like she's a shell of her former self. We see a photo of her as a grown-up with her mom, and we get the implication that her mom has passed away. And that's what's brought us to this darker version of the same room many decades later. Outside of the house, she runs into a neighbor who checks in on her. She asks if Emily is planning on decorating the house this year. Emily is kind of out of it. She says she's not sure. The neighbor offers to help her if she wants it, and notes it is Candy Cane Lane, after all, that the house stays on. She'll let her know. So this is a thing that the movie puts forth at the beginning, and you feel like it's going to be a big element, that this house is located on Candy Cane Lane. And of course, a Candy Cane Lane address would mean that you would go all out for Christmas. And it's a weird little bit that they add in, that this house is on this street where everybody goes gaga for Christmas. But it never really comes up again. There's other houses, they're decorated heavily, but it's never... I would say it's rarely mentioned that this house is on an address associated with Christmas. And for those reasons, it would encourage people to get into the Christmas spirit maybe more heavily. Anyway, the neighbor offering to help her decorate because she lives on Candy Cane Lane. Also, Emily does not live here. She visited to help her mom. I'm guessing her mom had something in the form of cancer or another long-term illness, because the story that we'll come to understand is that she was visiting from where she lives, which is Seattle, to wherever this place is, and I do not know where it is. They just call it Ivy Lane, or no, Ivy Place, something like Ivywood, something like that. And anyway, so she was visiting during the last days of her mom's life to help take care of her, and now she's remaining there at least for a little while longer. So she doesn't live on Candy Cane Lane, but she is ostensibly living there now that her mom has passed away, and she's kind of left to help pick things up. Emily looks derisively around at the heavily decorated houses surrounding them. She heads over to a local grocery store where Emily is cut in front of and in line by an older lady complaining about the lack of red and green cat toys. She says the yellow ones aren't very festive. Then she complains about being overcharged the last time she was in the store by 20 cents. Emily loses her shit on this woman. Are you really complaining about being cheated out 20 cents? You're worried about festive cat toys for a cat that may not even be able to see colors, and some of us aren't even sure how we're going to make it through the holidays. FYI, I looked it up. Cats can see color, but not the same range as humans. Emily, now embarrassed by her blow-up, sets her purchases down on the counter and walks out. On the way, she runs into a guy, literally runs into him, who asks if she's okay. She says to him, "Depends on your definition of okay," and she leaves the store. Back at home, a real estate agent knocks at the door and asks if Emily has thought any more about selling the house, considering the Christmas season is upon them, and her house is on the famous Candy Cane Lane. There is literally no better time to sell the house than now. Underneath this scene, there is music that makes you think that this character of the real estate agent is a comedy character, a clown, as I put it in my notes, which doesn't fit the rest of this movie. It was like suddenly for one scene, this movie was a more traditional, tropey type of Christmas movie with the character that do not take this character seriously. They're just talking out of their ass. And it was while the real estate agent was talking about the things I was just mentioning about how, if you want to sell the house, you want to sell it now. Don't wait too long or else the value is going to go down. And it was just a weird detour for this movie. Emily promises that she'll make a decision soon. She probably should head back home to Seattle soon as well. The real estate agent eventually works her way out, but then another person named Kat shows up. Kat is Emily's best friend, or at least her best friend that lives there in town. She brought tamales as a gift for Emily, the sort of way that a lot of people bring food to those that are grieving, because it's hard to take care of yourself when you're in such a bad place. They talk about Emily staying in the house. Emily says that after her mom passed, she just couldn't wait to get back home, but now she's not ready to leave. Kat checks in on a few things, including whether Emily has kept going to the grief support group meetings. Emily says she hasn't. She says she's all cried out, potentially clinically dehydrated, and the women laugh. Kat has to go and leaves Emily on her own. Emily closes her eyes and asks her mom if she is indeed watching over her now to please give her a sign. We cut to a busy newsroom at a newspaper. We join the guy who Emily ran into at the grocery store. His name is Noah. This is where he works. He's talking to his editor about a story that he wants to write about the plight of the snowy egret. She appreciates his enthusiasm for our feathered friend, as the editor puts it, but she'd prefer a Christmassy story considering the time of the year. He's not interested in Christmassy stories. He's not into the kind of the lighter fare. He wants something with more substance. She has an offer for him, though. If he can prove to her that he's a versatile writer, a.k.a. write something that might actually get popular eyeballs instead of just something that has a lot of soul, she'd put his name forward for a staff writer position. Noah hears this and he's immediately in. He's willing to do that work. He needs to have a Christmassy piece to her within 3 weeks. Cut to him typing away, but not having much success. We then meet his brother Isaiah, who stops by to check on his progress. Isaiah does not matter. I wish I had not included him in my notes. We cut to Emily wanting to check out a box of old worries that had been left behind by her and her mom. Remember, because they put their worries in a box. So she opens the box, and what does she find on top but a letter from her mom? She becomes overwhelmed, so she puts those new worries in the box as well. She opens the letter on top. It's from her mom, as I mentioned, written on Christmassy stationery. Maybe it's even just drawn by her mom on the paper. It's from just prior to Christmas and addresses the fact that if Emily is reading this, it means that her mom won't be around for this Christmas. Emily cries hard while reading it. The letter continues. Her mom has created for her a Christmas checklist, a list of 12 things that she wants Emily to do before Christmas. They don't have to be done in order. The 12th activity will come to her on Christmas Eve. Her mom closes the letter by saying how proud she is of her daughter. And let's review what is on the checklist. Number 1. Now again, these don't have to be done in order, but they are numbered. Number 1, donate jackets and clothes. Number 2, decorate the house like you're trying to win a contest. Number 3, get to know a stranger and be kind to others. Number 4, go on a wintry Christmas adventure. Number 5, upon waking, state one thing that you're thankful for. Number 6, send handwritten Christmas cards to show love and appreciation. Number 7, get to know your neighbors. Number 8, volunteer for a cause. Number 9, do something you're afraid of. Number 10, pick up a hobby, or pick up a new or old hobby. Number 11, forgive a grudge. Life is too short. And of course, as previously mentioned, the 12th checklist item is blank. Emily decides to start with number 1 and the donating of clothes. So she pulls out her mom's old jackets from the closet with tears in her eyes. We cut to her at a place hosting a coat drive. Her arms full, she accidentally runs into, guess who? It's the guy from the grocery store, a.k.a. Noah, the other main character in this movie. He helps her pick up the coats and introduces himself to her properly. He asks why she's donating so much clothing. He explains that he's a reporter trying to learn about the spirit of giving for a story he wants to write. The way he says it, you can tell that he's not fully into the idea. She says even to herself that he doesn't sound too convinced. He says, well, it's a work in progress. And she explains that she's donating the clothes for a checklist. He's intrigued. What do you mean? She adds that her mom died. And he says, oh, I lost my mom a few years back around Christmas as well. It made him less into the season. And that kind of lends credence to this idea that he's not into the Christmassy season. He's not into the pomp and circumstance of the Christmas season. He wants to deal with something that he views as more serious. She goes on to talk about the list and its rules. He thinks it's a nice way to stay connected to her mom, but she feels it's a bit burdensome as well. He asks if he can write about her checklist, and she says she's not interested. It's too personal. He says, yes, but those are the best stories. Plus, don't you feel better having shared it with me? And she says, yes, but that's because you tricked me with your journalistic charm. And he says, wait, journalistic charm? Do I have that? And she goes, oh, you most certainly have that. And they're immediately kind of flirting and having a nice time with each other. He explains that he's trying to find a story that they can get him his new position, which is, I guess, a promotion of sorts. She understands, but still isn't into the idea of having her story written about. She starts to leave, but then he has an idea. Can I help you with the checklist? I could use some help in the Christmas cheer department. She says, well, and plus she mentioned that there were some things that she didn't want to do on the list, so he could help her with those. She asks him to promise, though, that it won't be for his story. He says it will be completely off the record. Emily says she'll think about it. He gives her his business card. Cut to Emily thinking about contacting her ex instead, but then decides to contact Kat. She tells her about the checklist. Emily also mentions meeting a guy, but does say that she's not fully done with her ex. I said I met a guy, but don't mistake it. I'm still not done with my ex. She doesn't word it like not done with her ex, but basically that there's still some stuff that she has to get through regarding him. She's not really sure how she wants to handle this. This guy wants to help her, and she kind of wants to be helped by him, or maybe just in general. But does that make any sense? She doesn't really know this guy. And Kat suggests that you should do what your mom would do, and a.k.a. what would Ruby do? Live by that ethos. The next day we see Emily considering the business card, but then she tears it apart. Kat stops by and asks if she's called Noah yet, as they talked about the night before. Emily says she didn't call him. Kat suggests, look, if you think he's a stranger to you, why don't you do some research on him? He won't be a stranger if we research him. They see the different thoughtful, considered stories that he's written about things like the snowy egret. And there's also one about, probably around from the time his mother passed away, about dealing with grief during the holidays. And they're really impressed by his writing. And now Emily thinks she might give him a call after all, so Kat helps her tape together the business card. Cut to Noah. He's written a story on the spirit of giving and submits it to his editor as hopefully the story that'll get him that job. Over to Emily. She calls Noah, but then hangs up just as he answers. He calls her back. He says he was hoping she'd call. She asks if he's available now. He is. He's coming over. And then we get a quick getting out of the dirty old ratty pajamas and trying to look better montage with Emily now that she has Noah coming over. When Noah arrives, she explains the thing that they're working on will be decorating the house. Decorate it like you want to win a contest, as the checklist says. As they unpack decorations, Emily mentions that there was a book that both her and her mom liked called The Christmas Box, which featured the quote, "The best cure for a broken heart is to use it." She thinks that her mom left her the list as a way of distracting her from the sadness. Noah likes the sound of that and is ready to help her complete the list 110%. Emily seems touched but is also a bit overwhelmed. She mentions that she's read some of his articles. He's surprised and also a bit touched himself. He looks through some of the older decorations and says if they're going to decorate like they're trying to win a contest, they might need to up their game. Cut to them at a Christmas market shopping for new decorations. While there, Emily sees a stand about adopting and fostering pets and picks up a flyer. And decorations, tons of decorations. As they decorate, this is when we find out that Emily is a nurse in Seattle. She came back to this town, Ivywood, to help take care of her mom just before she passed. She has to head back on January 1st, so the decision about selling the house or not, about everything really, has to be made pretty soon. When Emily and Noah are done decorating, it's time for the next item on the list. Emily decides she's going to tackle going on a wintry adventure, and she chooses ice skating. Noah is not very good at it, but he's game to try, and we see them have fun even if he is bad at ice skating. He asks if he can see the rest of the checklist, and so she sends it over to him over his phone, but she says, look, just as a friend, not a reporter, and he promises he won't share it. The next item that she wants to try is sending Christmas cards. They'll both send them and then check in after they've written their Christmas cards up. But before she gets to that, we see her wake up one morning and try the grateful item, about where you wake up and you say something that you're grateful for. She wakes up and says that she's grateful for the checklist, her mom, her best friend Kat, and for meeting Noah. She smiles and checks it off the list. Then we get a card-making montage. Then we see that checked off. Next up, we have Emily and Kat and her kids head to a retirement home and play games with the seniors that live there. That knocks volunteering for a cause off the list. Next up, we get a bit with Kat having trouble with her boss while planning a Christmas party. Her boss, it turns out it's not her boss, that's just how she acts. They're more like co-workers that are trying to plan this Christmas party for the town. So she's very snide and short with Kat, so Kat gives her a copy of the list that she printed off and asks her to do one thing on it. It might make a difference and make the woman feel better. Back over to Emily, who tries out a new or old hobby, and it's playing guitar. We can tell by the guitar picks on the guitar, which were R and E, that this is a guitar that belonged to her mom, Ruby. We then get a flashback when her and her mom performed at a show when she was little. I thought it was like a talent show, but it ends up being an earlier version of a Christmas concert that they're going to have in this same movie later on. So that's what that was. Now Emily's at an event where you can adopt or foster dogs. There's a dog that she's interested in fostering, but unfortunately he's already spoken for. The guy asks her to leave her info in case anything changes, and then wishes her luck on the list. Emily is surprised that he knows about the list, but still thanks him for the luck. Next up is a tree decorating montage. This is not an item on the list, but this is something that Emily asked Noah if he'd like to help her with. And he said, is this for the list? And she goes, no, which implies that it's just for them to hang out. And he is obviously down with that. Over to Kat, who hears from her party performing singer that they have to cancel. What's she going to do now? She needs a singer for the party. Back over to Noah and Emily. We find out that he was working on a novel, but it got thrown off when he broke up with his ex. This leads to Emily talking about her ex. This is the one that has been mentioned a few times that Kat does not seem to be very fond of. Next up, we see Emily and Noah arriving at the same Christmas Village deal where you can foster a dog, and also where everybody bought ornaments earlier in the movie. But tonight, it's a special event. It's a caroling event, and it seems that Noah may have tricked old Emily into coming to the caroling event. But she does the caroling anyway. She gets really into it, and she sings louder than she meant to. And boy, howdy, can she sing. She can sing really well. Everyone is impressed and claps for her. Afterward, Emily invites Noah to join her in a gingerbread house building contest that's happening in town. And it's just, this is another continuation of her wanting to do things with him that's outside of the list. At home, she finally hears from her ex. She's been talking about how he's kind of cut off conversation with her. And the way it's explained in the movie, piecemeal throughout the movie, is that he said, we need to take a break. And then she thinks that he meant more like a breakup. And then since she's gone home, dealing with the passing of her mom, she has yet to hear from him. Well, this is him reaching out to her. The conversation's pleasant enough. He talks about how much he misses her and how much he wishes he had not contacted her. She doesn't know what to say, though. We cut to Kat trying to find a replacement singing act for her show No one's available. What could possibly happen here now that we know our main character Emily can sing? They decide, her and her boss, who's not really her boss, they decide to change things up and instead make it kind of an open invite where people can come and perform a song or two. Well, I guess probably not two. Kind of like an open mic night, but for people in town. In order to get her boss, who's not her boss, to sign on, Kat says, well, if we do this, I have no doubt that I can get Emily to participate. And the woman remembers that Emily, when she was a little kid, she used to sing all the time with her mom. That's what we saw that flashback was from earlier. And so that now that she knows she has at least one participant in, she's willing to make it an official thing that this is what the Christmas musical presentation will be. People can come and sing a song on their own. While they're discussing this, Emily shows up to check in on Kat and see how things are going with the party planning. And they also talk about her ex showing up to talk to her the night before. Kat isn't sure that he's worth the time, but Emily isn't as sure. Maybe he's still a good guy. Now we're with Noah at work. Turns out his boss didn't like the piece that he submitted, and he has 2 more weeks to submit a new one. Back with Kat and her party planning boss, who's not a boss. Kat lies, and this is when she lies and says that Emily has already signed up for the music show. And now it's time for the gingerbread house contest. Time for winners. There's 2 winners. There's most original, and that goes to a cat house made by the lady who complained about the lack of festive cat toys earlier in the movie. And then there's only one other award. There's most original, and then there's best overall. And that goes to Noah's gingerbread house. Yay, he is happy, and so is Emily. When he goes up, he has a speech for everyone, and he thanks his, quote, partner in all things Christmas, Emily. We join Emily in chatting with the nosy neighbor from earlier who asked if she was going to be decorating the house. We find out that Emily influenced the nosy neighbor to chat with a neighbor that people didn't really talk to. And this is because of the list, and people everywhere in town are finding out about the list and behaving accordingly. This is one of those evidences of that. We see Emily practicing her guitar when her ex texts her. She's annoyed and a bit overwhelmed by hearing from him. Kat stops by to tell Emily that about the musical act, how she's now been signed up to sing even though she didn't sign herself up. Emily says no. Kat says, look, I've already kind of promised you that you'd be there. Emily is mad, but thinks about it. She explains that she's just nervous about performing in front of crowds. Plus, there's this whole connection where this is something I did with my mom, and my mom has since passed away. But she promises she'll think about it. At the newspaper office, Noah finds out that the other pitches he's been sending to his editor aren't good enough. She's surprised at how bad they are, actually. They aren't like him. They aren't like his writing. He says, look, I have a good story, but it's not my story to tell. He runs through the general overview of the Christmas checklist, and his editor thinks that this story is much, I think you can run with this story, because it's not just about Emily, who you told that you won't write a story about this with. It's also your story now to tell, because you're a part of this story. She asks him to send her some notes, and then she'll promises not to do anything with the notes until they talk, which sounds very familiar to what we experienced in yesterday's movie, Very Charming Christmas Town, where Reagan, the sister, one of the 2 sisters that ran the travel blog, just unilaterally published a story which she should not have published without checking with the writer, her sister. But in this case, I don't think they're going to screw this up as much. We join Noah and Emily on a bit of a date when his editor calls. She tells Noah that she loves the story and wants to run with it. He says he'll think about it. Afterward, he tells Emily about everything that's going on, about how he admitted that he had this story to his editor. The editor likes what he's written so far, and the editor would like to run it as a full-fledged story. And he wouldn't want to do it, except this is very important, and he wants to get this promotion. He wants to get this staff writer position. Emily understands all of it, but she doesn't want him to do it. She doesn't want him to follow through. He says, I understand that you might not want me to, but I want to at this point. I'm just so inspired by you, by our time together. The words just pour out of me when I talk about it. He's really sorry, but basically he says he has to run the story. Emily doesn't want him to. She's very mad at Noah. She accuses him of spending time with her just for his story. Maybe he's not who she thought he was. She storms out of his house. They were in his house, FYI. Cut to her complaining about Noah to Kat. Kat tries to talk her down. Maybe Noah's a good guy who just made a bad choice. We then jump over to the Christmas village. The dog who Emily wanted to foster is now available. The guy who runs that station introduces Emily to the dog. Emily, meet Ruby. What? But that's the name of her mom. It must be meant to be. Emily is taken aback, but greets the dog warmly. We see her wake up the next morning with the dog, and she announces what she's grateful about. We cut to Noah at a Christmas party with his friends, and a lady is trying hard to get his attention, but his heart simply isn't into it. When he leaves, the girl offers him to walk him home, even though he lives nearby. Outside, she comes clean about her intentions and gives him a big smooch. Just as she kisses him on the lips, Emily is out walking her newly fostered dog. She sees Noah kissing this woman and immediately walks away. He does not notice that she was there. When the kiss ends, he tells the girl that, look, I'm sorry, I understand what you're saying because you kissed me. He doesn't word it that way. But basically, I understand what you're getting at, but I'm actually into somebody else. I'm really sorry about that. And the girl, who's very understanding, says, well, if you're into somebody else, you need to go get that person. Cut to Emily being sad about seeing Noah kiss someone else. She decides to sell the house. Later, Emily cleans up after dinner when Noah arrives with a gift for her and something else. First, he starts by apologizing, and that's a fine apology, but he doesn't apologize about the kiss because he doesn't know she saw the kiss. He apologizes about the story, and he gives her a copy of the newspaper with the story that he wrote in it. Emily is sorry that she blew up at him. She promises that she will try to read it. And she also talks about how maybe she kind of overreacted and that having the story out there is not the worst thing. Things like that. Before he can give her the other gift that he has for her. When she says that she forgives him and that she's also sorry, we see her checking off the item on the 12-item checklist about forgiving a grudge. So as I mentioned, he has a gift for her, but then her ex arrives. He's there in person. His name is Dave, and he's shown up as a surprise for her because she stopped responding to him. Noah decides to leave immediately. Emily asks her ex if they can talk the next morning. He says, yeah, that's cool. And sure enough, we cut to her talking to him the next morning, basically saying that I'm just not into this anymore. I think you made a good decision when you thought we should take a break. And I think you were right. We should take a break, a permanent break. I'm not into you anymore, and I don't think you're really into me. The end. She breaks up with him for good. Next, we find out that she's adopting Ruby the dog for good. Then we see she's calling off the sale of the house. She's going to stay there. Next up, we see her deciding to read the story that Noah wrote. As she reads it, we hear him reading it as a voiceover. We also see people all over town reading it, and everyone seems to be really moved by the story of the Christmas checklist. Next, we see Emily all dressed up, ready for the musical performance. Apparently, at some point off camera, she agreed to do the song at the Christmas Eve party. Her nosy neighbor stops by ahead of the performance and has the 12th item for Emily. Remember, the 12th item would arrive on Christmas Eve. What she has for her, in fact, is a note from Emily's mom explaining that the 12th item is to keep your heart open. Emily is touched. At the big Christmas party, Noah runs into his boss and finds out he got the job. Backstage, Emily thinks back to performing with her mom at similar events. She gets introduced and marches on stage. We see her hand checking off another one on her 12-item checklist, which is do something you're scared of. We watch Emily sing her song, and she does a very fine job. When she's done, everyone claps. She marches right over to Noah and apologizes for how she reacted, which is weird because the last time they talked, she sort of already apologized for how she reacted. It was just that they got interrupted by her ex. He gives her the gift that he bought for her, a snow globe that she spotted on their first quote-unquote date when they were shopping for decorations. She tells him that she's not getting back with her ex, and that she's not going back to Seattle. She says she read the article, and seeing the list through his eyes, she understands that love is the lasting gift that her mom gave to her. Also, she mentions, I saw you kissing that woman. And he says, what? Wait, you saw that? And she goes, yeah, I saw that. It's okay, I understand. She goes, no. It was a misunderstanding. It was like one of those mistletoe misunderstandings. It's not what it looks like. I'm not into that person at all. And so I just want to point out, actually, let's save it until the end of the movie. I'll come back to it. I mean, the movie's basically over. What I mean is I'll save it till after the movie's over. So yeah, she says seeing the list through Noah's eyes, the way he wrote the story, really made it crystal clear to her that her mom's her lasting gift that she gave to Emily was about love. And he says, well, I hope that I can be a part of that. And she says, you already are. And then they kiss. Then we see her checking off the last item about leaving her heart open for something or someone. And that's it. That's the end of the movie. So just real quick, the The one thing I thought where this movie got a little too tropey, a little too cliched, was when they had her stumble upon him kissing somebody else. It never factored into anyone's decision making. It didn't factor into his decision making, and it definitely didn't factor into Emily's decision making. She never faulted him for what happened. She never used it as evidence that he wasn't into her. They had all of that already built in with the story, and they didn't even do the cliched thing where he kept it secret that he was writing a story. He told her up front what was happening, and that's where they had a division between the two of them because of how each one of them wanted to handle that. That all made sense and seemed like a mature way to go about it. But having her see him kiss somebody did not add to the story at all, especially because by the end of the movie, she simply mentions it and he explains it away, and there's no other discussion about it. So if you take away those two bits, the movie is exactly the same. It's like turning left 3 times. You're back where you started. Is that right? Yeah, basically that's right. So yeah, I just felt like that wasn't... No, you're not. You have to turn 4 times. God, I'm leaving this in because it sounds so stupid. It just seemed like an unnecessary diversion into clichédom. And I was disappointed in the movie because otherwise this movie was delightful. Like the acting was really good. It was really touching and sentimental. And yeah, it had a lot of the same things that we've seen in other movies, but it handles it in such a better way. So if you're interested in watching, this movie, I can't recommend it enough. It's not the best movie ever, but it's a really good movie. And I did not mind that it was as long as it was. Who is the MVP of this movie? Well, it's got to be Emily. The woman who played the lead did really a great job. She was easy to watch. I totally bought into, the emotions that she was conveying and the journey that she went on to kind of come out of her cave into a new version of her life. So that's it. That's the end of the movie. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments or questions, I forget to mention this often, but you can always reach out to me at JOEMOC on most social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram, Blue Sky even, whatever you want out there. And drop me a line if you have any questions or requests. And that's about it. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.